All right. So today we're getting into this whole dock worker strike that's like brought shipping to a screeching halt across the U.S., right?
So it's a big one for sure.
It's huge. Ports from Maine to Texas are at a standstill. We're talking tens of thousands of workers on the picket lines. It's kind of unnerving if you think about it.
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack, really unprecedented.
Totally. So for those of us who don't, spend our days down by the waterfront,
Yeah.
can you just give the quick rundown on who the major players are in all of this?
Sure. So we've got the International Longshoremen's Association, the ILA. They're the ones representing the dock workers themselves.
Okay, got it.
They're the boots on the ground, loading and unloading those massive cargo ships you see.
Right.
And on the other side, there's the U.S. Maritime Alliance, the USMX. They're like the voice of the shipping companies, the port operators.
Okay, so it's the ILA versus the USMX, kind of like, I don't know, David and Goliath.
You could say that.
Workers versus the big guys.
Right. And the timing of it all just adds another layer, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely.
Because we're weeks away from a presidential election, and the holiday shopping season's coming up fast.
It's like this strike is a giant wave about to crash into an already crazy election year.
That's one way to put it.
So let's, break down what's really at the core of this. Why are these workers willing to take such drastic measures? What are they fighting for?
Well, it really boils down to two main issues. Wages, and then this whole looming threat of automation,
Right.
The ILA, they're pushing hard for big pay raises, and I get it. I mean, the cost of living has gone through the roof with inflation, and these shipping companies, they were making a killing during the pandemic.
Yeah, I saw that the ILA wants a 77% pay increase over 6 years.
That's right.
That's a big jump.
It is. It is.
But then the USMX countered with 50%, which, that's not nothing.
No, it's not.
So where's the disconnect?
It's like they're speaking different languages.
Yeah.
The ILA's point is that those starting wages, which were between $20 and $39 an hour before bonuses even, they haven't kept pace at all.
And then you add those massive pandemic profits into the mix.
Exactly.
And suddenly a 50% raise doesn't seem so generous, especially when you're talking about, backbreaking work.
You got it. And then you layer on top of that this whole thing with automation.
Right, because it's not even just about today's paycheck. It's about job security or the lack of it.
Exactly. Yeah. The ILA is really worried, and rightfully so, about automation taking over the ports.
Yeah.
I mean, these jobs were tough, but they provided a good living, a middle-class living, and that's all disappearing.
And I was reading about this guy, Henry Glover Jr., a fourth-generation dock worker down in New Orleans.
Yeah, what about him?
He was talking about how it used to be unloading these 150-pound sacks of sugar all by hand until automation came in.
Wow.
And now he's seen those giant robotic arms. He's just thinking, that's it. That's my job gone.
It's heartbreaking, but it's becoming more and more common, you know? That's why the ILA is pushing so hard for those protections against job losses because of automation in this contract.
Right.
Whether they can get the USMX to budge on that is another story.
Yeah, it's a tough one for sure.
Yeah.
It's like this whole thing's a tinderbox, right?
Yeah.
And automation's that smart.
It's a good analogy.
That could blow it all up.
It really captures the tension, because this isn't just about one contract. Yeah. It's like this wave of anxiety about the future of work, and not just for dock workers, right? I mean, you think about it, the shipping industry, it's a bellwether.
Yeah?
What happens on those docks has ripple effects, across the globe.
Totally. So we've got wages, we've got this automation anxiety, and then this ticking clock.
Oh, yeah.
Of, holiday shopping and a presidential election.
Can't forget that.
What does each side really stand to lose here if this drags on? Who's got the upper hand?
That's the question, isn't it?
It is.
I mean, if you look at the ILA, their power they're essential.
Right.
You can't easily replace those workers.
Right.
They are the ones who literally make global trade happen, and public support for unions, it's way up.
It's true.
It's not your grandfather's union movement anymore, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, people are starting to remember, oh, right, unions built the middle class.
Exactly. And then there's that ripple effect from the West Coast dock workers last year,
Oh, right.
That contract, it was a big win.
Totally.
Sent a message. Plus, you mentioned the timing, right?
Right.
Supply chains already strained thanks to Hurricane Helene.
Right.
Even a short strike could cause chaos.
Okay, so the ILA's got some leverage.
They do.
But the USMX, they're not just going to roll over, right?
No, they have their own cards to play.
What are those?
Time, for one.
Okay.
Every week this drags on, it costs the U.S. economy an estimated $4.5 billion.
Whoa.
Billion with a B.
That's a lot of zeros.
That's going to start hurting even those big companies.
Yeah, and I imagine those costs trickle down to, like, everyday shoppers pretty quickly.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Empty shelves,
Yeah.
delays, price hikes, especially as we get closer to the holidays.
Yet no one wants to be the Grinch who cancels Christmas.
Exactly.
And honestly, no one in Washington wants to be seen as dropping the ball on this either, not with an election coming up.
Well, that's the wild card, isn't it?
Yeah, totally.
Biden's in a tough spot.
Talk about a rock and a hard place, right?
Totally.
Because you've got the Chamber of Commerce practically begging him to step in.
Right.
But Biden ran as a pro-union president.
He did.
Angering labor weeks before an election could be, like, disastrous.
It's a tightrope walk, for sure. And how he handles it could have huge consequences.
Yeah.
Both for the strike and for his political future.
So what are his options here?
Well, he could try to stay out of it,
Okay.
let him duke it out.
Right.
But the longer this goes on, the more likely he is to be forced to intervene.
And we've seen that before, haven't we?
Yeah,
Didn't George W. Bush have to step in back in '02 with the West Coast ports?
he did.
Okay.
Faced with that economic pressure, and the supply chain was really on the brink then.
So what did he do?
He invoked the Taft-Hartley Act.
Okay, now for those of us who aren't labor law experts,
Sure.
what does that even mean?
Well, essentially, it's a way for the president to force a cooling off period in a labor dispute if it's seen as, like, a national emergency.
So, like, everyone just take a time out.
Exactly. It's a last resort, really.
Got it. So we've got a range of possibilities here, everything from a quick resolution to, like, a full-blown presidential intervention.
Absolutely.
But for our listener, for you, like, what's the big takeaway here?
I think the real story is bigger than just the ports.
Yeah.
This strike, even if it ends tomorrow,
Right.
it's revealed some really deep tensions.
Okay.
We're talking about the future of work,
Yeah.
technology's role, this anxiety around globalization.
That's a lot.
This is like a microcosm of what workers are grappling with everywhere, across industries.
So what you're saying is, even if we see those container ships moving again next week, this whole thing's shown us some, like, cracks in the system. Cracks, I don't know, it feels like more than that.
Right.
Like a seismic shift or something.
Yeah.
We're talking about the very way we work.
And it's happening everywhere. Right.
Everywhere.
It's not just the docks. It's,
Exactly.
every industry is having to grapple with this.
So where do we even go from here? If this is the new normal, what do we do?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And there's no easy answer, unfortunately. And
Right.
I think it requires a real fundamental rethink of how we approach, like, the social contract almost,
Wow.
Education, how we train people, economic development, the whole thing.
That's a pretty daunting to-do list.
It is, but it's also an opportunity.
I bet.
We have this chance to really build something better.
Right.
Where technology actually benefits everybody.
Right.
Not just, a small few.
Yeah.
But it's going to take real conscious effort,
Sure.
We need to be talking about retraining, upskilling,
Right.
a real safety net for workers.
So for our listener, the person who's been with us this whole time, like, what's the big takeaway? What should they be paying attention to as this thing plays out?
Don't just watch the ports, watch everything.
Okay.
Pay attention to how the strike ends, sure.
Yeah.
But more importantly, listen to the conversations that come out of it.
Okay.
Because this is about so much more than just wages and,
Right.
cargo ships.
Yeah.
This is about what kind of future we want to build.
Wow. That's a powerful thought to end on. Thank you so much for
Of course, yeah.
guiding us through all of this.
Happy to.
And to everyone listening, keep asking those questions. Keep digging deeper, because the future, we're building it together.
That's right.
We'll be back soon with another deep dive into a topic that's shaping our world.
Looking forward to it.
Until then, stay curious.